Hi, everyone, and welcome to Single Source Summary and Analysis. I'm Sarah Tabuada, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Dr. Basil Considine. Today, we're going to be going over reviewing the concepts of analysis and synthesis. We're going to use BUSA 530's Week 4, MBA 1.2, Assignment 3, Steve Jobs' mission as an example, and then we're going to tie it to understand core principles of single source analysis. So those are our objectives. So let's dive right in with learning objective 1, reviewing analysis and synthesis. Here we go. So what exactly are analysis and synthesis? For starters, they are key parts of critical writing. Pretty much all of your papers are going to ask you to at least analyze, and eventually they will ask you to also synthesize. They're key parts of an effective argument and basically tools for interpreting or showing the meaning of evidence, basically how you're backing up your claims. And when missing or ineffective, one of the most common areas to lose points. So if you're not including analysis or synthesis, it is very likely your professor is going to get very red pen happy and you will start losing a whole bunch of points on your assignment. So
Well, I do not like
to
losing
avoid that
points, so
happening,
tell me more, please.
yeah, so basically we're going to discuss evidence or argumentation. And this is, if I make a claim, that's a great starting point, but I need to back it up. And that doesn't mean just inserting a quote from a fancy journal article. I want it to be woven into my paragraph so that everything flows. So I want them to be
Now,
connected.
something I always like to tell people is make sure you proofread before you submit. And so every presentation, there's one thing to look for to catch here. And if you're looking at this slide, you might notice that we have a period here. So for consistency, you're going to want to have a period after everyone. And if you're using Word or PowerPoint, make sure to run a spelling and grammar check because that can help you catch those things.
Here.
Moving
Thank you,
on.
Basil. Yep. So we're going to look at some examples of, well, without analysis. So research has shown that owning increasing numbers of cats results in an increasing likelihood of group intervention by family and friends. And then
Say
we have
what?
the citation. Yes. I know. Why would they try and intervene? Clearly the person is happy. According to Negrito 2018, the goals of these interventions by loved ones should be explored further. So in these examples, we present some interesting facts, but they're kind of just standing alone, kind of just dangling there by themselves. It's
So yeah,
interesting.
looking at that quote, I'm not sure if should the explored further means should the family and friends give up or should they be looking for a better strategy? I'm not clear from reading it.
Yeah, so what could we do to improve this and actually use analysis? So here's an example, the same information, but now we have included analysis. Research has shown that owning increasing numbers of cats results in an increasing likelihood of group interventions by family and friends. According to Negrito 2018, the goals of these interventions by loved ones should be explored further. However, interventions are not always advisable. For example, some studies have found that about half of cat owners respond to an intervention by embracing the crazy cat lady lifestyle and getting even more cats. which is counterproductive to the friends and family.
If I were to break down this example that you just read, Sarah, we have
Mm-hmm.
the first two sentences, the one starting research has shown with the citation, and according to Negrito and the quotation. Those are both giving us evidence here. And then we have the statement saying, however, interventions are not always advisable. Even though you might think from the evidence, be careful about it. And then it backs up that claim that they're not always advisable with this statement. For example, some studies have found this thing, and we can see two supporting citations for that. And then they comment that, yes, they're getting even more cats. Embracing the crazy cat lady lifestyle isn't helpful if the friends and family are trying to get them to not have more cats.
Yes, that is a failed intervention.
What about this other example? Because I see it's got some of the same text we were looking at earlier, but taking it in a different direction.
All right, let's read it out and see what's going on. According to Negrito 2018, the goal of these interventions by loved ones should be explored further before considering an intervention. For example, understanding why a person has chosen to own more than 4 cats is a key step in determining that tone they are likely to respond to. In addition, in my own experience, stating that an individual cannot take care of so many cats is unlikely to cause someone to stop getting more cats, but does have a high likelihood of causing them to break off the friendship. True story.
We've got a lot of stuff going on here. So I wish to point out that the threshold marked here is more than 4 cats. So the interventions are for people who have 5 or more cats already. So that's a lot of cats. And so we see what tone. So it's not saying in this example, don't do an intervention, but think carefully about how you're going to do it. And then we have this kind of complementary anecdotal thing where after we've gotten the evidence from the literature presented in analysis, we have the additional perspective and to give us even more understanding about that.
Mm,
So we've got both the formal and the informal mixed together there.
mm.
All right.
More
Just
examples.
examples. These
Mhm.
ones not involving cats. I'll go ahead and read these if you don't mind.
Okay, awesome. Go for it.
In alignment with the Chique 2014, Emmanuel 2015 discovered that COPD patients responded positively to the treatment over 1 year. So in this case, the analysis is pointing out, hey, Emmanuel 25 isn't the only one who said that. We've got two different sources that are saying this. And then Smith 2010 found that birth order and personality traits were connected. However, Smith's 2010 results are less likely to be generalizable to the use of a small homogeneous population of 11 siblings. I don't know about you, but I don't think there are so many families in the United States with 11 siblings these days, at least not newer ones. So that might be, you might see some things that are a little bit different in a smaller family. So
Just a
we have that,
smidge.
however, pointing out, well, there's this detail about how they did it that might affect how we view that finding, which is helpful because, well, I come from one of those populations of 11 siblings. I'm like, it's totally normal for me. What do you mean, Sarah? You didn't have to do laundry and clean and cook for all these people growing up. It's totally normal in my experience.
That's because, okay, what number are you? Of the 11, what number are you? That would explain
Third,
everything.
third of
Oh,
11.
see? Oh, see, and I'm number 4 of 5. I was on the tail end.
Well, it's 3 versus 4. We should be pretty close to their sibling habits, right? It's that
Yeah,
extra after 5 that makes all the difference. Just as in our previous
I
example, the cats after 5.
Yeah. Well, now that I think of that, I do believe our assistant director has 6 cats. So should we be staging an intervention for her?
We'll have to invite Evie to the next webinar when we do analysis and synthesis. All right, so as you've seen here, the analysis is about connecting the dots between evidence, showing things that are important to understanding or shaping that argument and or the context, and tells us why something is or isn't important or relevant. Like I might say that, well, the 10th sibling is the most important one in the family, and you might say, 10th, we never got anywhere close. So we need to make
Clearly,
sure
it's
that
number 4.
we need to make sure that the details that are being presented are important for whatever thing we're trying to apply them for.
Mhm.
And if it's not clear, to make an argument about why we should try this anyway.
Mm.
Now, we talked about analysis and synthesis as a pair. So, what is synthesis that analysis isn't? Well, this is where we're getting to things like deductive reasoning. We're looking at how we take all these things and use it to form a whole to create more meaning. Like, how does this matter to our specific situation? And it's often taking a lot of diverse little points of data and analysis and saying, well, here's how we make sense of it. And I think we have an example coming up to show how evidence and argumentation are separate from analysis and separate from synthesis, and how those usually go in that order of getting the evidence or argumentation first, then you analyze it, then you synthesize it together. You're up, Sarah?
Okay, here we go. In the example scenario, Jill owns 3 adult Maine Coon cats and is considering adopting a bonded pair of Maine Coon kittens.
Question.
According to,
What's a Maine Coon?
yes. Oh, those are pretty ginormous cats. It's a pretty big breed. I don't think they get any bigger than Maine Coons.
Yeah, they're the largest domestic cat breed unless you live in Russia and have, a lynx.
Yeah. No, I think they're like 3 times the size of like a normal domestic cat.
All right, let's start again from the beginning. I won't
Okay.
interrupt.
All right, sorry. Okay, here we go. In the example scenario, Jill owns 3 adult Maine Coon cats and is considering adopting a bonded pair of Maine Coon kittens. According to Toshido 2022, it would be unwise for Jill's friends to have a group intervention, despite Jill's pre-existing financial problems with affording food for 3 15-pound cats. Therefore, Jill's friends should consider ways to clear up space in Jill's apartment and encourage her to find permanent homes at the local senior center for her older cats. Aw,
On
okay.
seeing this example, I'm not sure that the local senior center is the best place because if these cats sit in the seniors' laps, they probably won't be strong enough to get up.
Uh-oh.
They'll be trapped by cats.
Just, oops.
I think we have another example here.
Okay. Let's see. Jill's severe pet dander allergies are a potential danger to her and visitors. While her owning 3 large cats from a breed famous for its large amounts of dander may seem unhealthy, the fact that she lives in a mouse-infested building may make it advisable for her to retain at least 1 cat. However, the fact that her 3 older cats no longer have teeth and only drink soup suggests that these cats would be better suited for the local senior center rather than as mouse catchers. Or
You know what?
maybe like a daycare? Maybe the little kids could handle it.
The more I think about it, these cats are probably a hazard to have around the senior center just because they'll trip, they'll sit on the walkers and drag them around and probably steal some of the seniors' food while we're at it.
Well, I mean, yeah, the senior center has like so much pudding. These cats would be all over that, bland food.
So as you can see, we have these complementary concepts. We're analyzing, we're examining what something is, including what it means or means to our specific context. and synthesizing, where we're deriving new meaning, often by applying that evidence and its analysis to a specific context. Or you could explain these as different ways of walking the reader through your understanding of what the evidence is and your argument for how that relates and adds up to new meaning.
Mhm.
And when you're writing in APA style, as you are in for almost every course in ACU online, you want to make sure that you write out these connections, not just leave them implied. Some
Mhm.
writing styles do let you leave the analysis so this is up to the reader, but not APA style. In fact, we have a whole webinar on this that you can watch if you like more information on analysis and synthesis. But our goal now is to look at how this might come up in an assignment. And so we're looking at this assignment coming from BUSA 530, which is our MBA leadership course. And I'll just point out that we have a whole related webinar, of which we've included a link here, for the week 7 assignment for this course. So if you're watching this for BUSA 530, come back in a couple weeks to watch the week 7 one, which is also dealing with Steve Jobs' leadership. Here's a really quick look at the assignment description. This is just so you have it all in one slide. We're going to divide it into first a preamble, which is telling you, hey, before you write the paper, you should read an assigned section of the Steve Jobs book. And now we go into the instructions themselves, where the student is asked to provide an analysis of Jobs' vision, mission, purpose, and values. No, it says analysis, not synthesis. So how is that different? Analysis, you're trying to understand what his vision was and how that was significant. Same thing with the mission, purpose, and values, and perhaps to compare or contrast it with those around him, whether at Apple and his other companies or elsewhere in the industry. But what we're not trying to do is derive a set of leadership practices for other tech leaders today. That would be more in the synthesis department. The analysis is focusing on these 4 things. Okay, what was going on? What did that mean? Or how did that relate? What made it unique or different or not? And we have that note at the bottom saying, hey, in those 3 periods, some of these things might change while others remain the same. And then there's a note here, cite a specific action or incident if possible that supports each answer. So when you're describing these, it's saying, give a supporting example. And I will say, from having seen several submissions for this assignment, the if possible is really a polite way of saying you should have a specific example for each of those answers as evidence towards it. And then the note that remember that a single event is unlikely to tell you much, whereas patterns of behavior can be more revealing, which is again a polite way of an instructor saying, give multiple examples to support your argument, multiple points of evidence, and then analyze them. Could consist of pointing out those patterns. You're also supposed to summarize what you see after reflecting on your response. And did he change over time or remain fairly constant? So it's giving you a specific analytical question to answer. Did this characteristic change or did it remain the same? And was there a shift in the relative importance of certain things? And the last item here is just a note on the length here. So 500 to 800 words, that's 2 full pages to a little bit over 3 full pages as our range here. And that's not counting the references, not counting the citations, and saying when you list out these 4 items for each of these 3 periods, you are allowed to list those as bullet points, which will allow you to save on a little bit of the wording because you don't have to introduce each one, just introduce the set divided into the eras. All right, great. And we have the rubric and it's saying, hey, they're going to be counting all these things. Do you have analysis of each of those for each of the periods with supporting examples? and then that you have this overall analysis where you note what has changed and not changed. And that by itself, that's 80% of the credit. So make sure you do that. So Sarah, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So way back on this introductory slide that I put together with our agenda, our learning objectives, I wrote single source without a space. And then we have on this other slide, we have single source with a hyphen. Which is correct here and why?
Both are correct. You just need to be consistent how you're presenting them.
Well, you're right. They both can be correct. So we want to be clear on what we mean here. So single source analysis with a hyphen is telling us that we're talking about analysis that's using a single source. So single source is hyphenated to show that that's a compound adjective modifying analysis. In the first one, which you are absolutely right, should be consistent with this and have a hyphen, single source analysis could be saying that there's just one source analysis, as which is sometimes different and sometimes the same. So should definitely have a hyphen here. And in this case, what we're talking about is when you focus on a single source, in this case, the Steve Jobs book, that's going to be your only source of information on Steve Jobs. And it helps you control how much you have to do. There's no outside research here required. It's focused on what this source tells you. And then because of the related course readings from the Nordhaus leadership book, you also have a basis for analyzing it where you can refer to many different styles of leadership or ways of understanding leadership that are described in that book, where you're going to use using it to understand Steve Jobs' life as presented in the Steve Jobs book.
Yeah.
And so that's this
And
second part here. When you may, when you're doing single source analysis, incorporate additional sources. And in this particular assignment, it's pretty short, probably not much of personal perspectives. If you do, be brief about it. Sarah, I think I accidentally talked over you.
no, I like how in the summary portion of the assignment description, it gives you specific questions to answer because you can use those questions to turn it around for your response when you're writing.
Great.
Did he
Yes.
change over time or remain fairly consistent? If I was answering that in my essay, I would say, over time, Steve Jobs remained fairly consistent as seen by blah, 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 dot, 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 provide my examples. But I'm using the question it's asking me and directly answering it. So I know that I've covered that.
That is an excellent point. Thank you. Now, when you're doing single source analysis, it's not just something that you have in a school assignment. This is actually very common when you have a book review that's focusing on, understandably, what's in that book that you're considering reading or buying, on third-party executive summaries. Believe it or not, many business executives get summaries that they're given to essentially decide whether they should read the book or just take those key points from it. And critical text editions when you're trying to come up with the definitive form of something and explain what it is. You have some authors like, say, Nabokov or James Joyce, where in the original printed editions, many things were cut out, or perhaps in a follow-up edition, some things were added or removed. And the critical text edition is trying to say, and here's what the author intended, which isn't always what was published or published first. So since we are dealing with a single source that's being analyzed, we have, of course, the requirement that we cite and reference it. So Sarah, I can just go ahead and copy and paste this stuff into my reference list and call it a day, right?
Not exactly. That
Not
gets
exactly.
that not exactly that. You can definitely copy paste this onto the reference page, but anything that you have listed on your reference page has to be represented in the text through in-text citations.
Okay, but in terms of like the formatting, this should be great, right? It's in the syllabus, so I don't need to change anything.
You need to make sure that when you paste it, it still looks like this.
Okay. And I'm seeing here from these cross-ups that there are a couple things I should not include. So let's walk through those first two sources. You're probably not citing the APA manual here, so we'll just do the Nordhaus text. So I see from this we have to have a space, G period, space, G period, so space between those author initials. And that instead of using title case, as we see in the syllabus, we should use sentence case for the book title, used within the references. We
Yes.
abbreviate the publisher to just Sage, and then we don't include the ISBN. Okay, seems straightforward. And so we have these two different ways we might cite it. And for Steve Jobs, since Jobs is his last name, it's capitalized that way, but we don't include the city and state in APA 7th edition, and we don't include the ISBN. All right, pretty straightforward. So how might we analyze that using the course text? Sarah, do you ever play Mad Libs
Yes.
where you write a list of things? All right,
Yeah.
could you quickly get me a list of three nouns here?
Oh, nouns? Okay, well, one of them should definitely be cats,
Okay,
since they have been, you know, sprinkled throughout this webinar. So we should have
okay,
cats, we should have mice, and just
okay,
for variety, we should have a race car.
okay. All right. According to the specific divisions outlined by Clifton Strengths, as cited in Nordhaus 2025, the leadership style used by Steve Jobs in the 1990s was dominated by cats, mice, and Ferraris. For example, Isaac 2015 stated that Jobs had to stop buying Ferraris, or whatever it is. So here, it's not the specific context; it's the form of pointing out that you're using a set of criteria that you have found in the course reading, like the Clifton Strengths ways of dividing up aspects of strength and leadership, and then listing those. If you're writing this specific assignment rather than in the 1990s, you are given a specific set of periods, the early years, the dark years, the rebirth years, to make sure that your wording is consistent with that. So your teacher knows that's exactly the thing that you're doing there. And then after you've made that claim in this first sentence, give us one or ideally two supporting examples showing that, yes, here's an instance of that thing happening. Now that there's more that you could say about Steve Jobs and his taste for sports cars and where he chose to park them, but that's for a different discussion. All right, Matt Libs again, and I need a verb from you, Sarah.
Okay. Running.
All right, Steve Jobs did not shy from running during meetings, a practice that I find extremely distasteful and a disincentive to work in any workplace. I'm guessing on grounds of body odor after this. Indeed, Nordhaus 2025 placed running during meetings on a category of destructive leadership habits to be avoided. Now, the point is not the specific examples here, it's noting here's something that he did, and there may be a place to make a personal observation to refer to your professional experience. But if you're doing it you'll want to complement it by saying it's not just you, but saying this is also something that is noted in the literature. And so we have those complementary statements there rather than having something that can easily be dismissed. So let's take a moment to go into the question of how to describe something and then analyze it through the lens of personal experience. It's generally going to work best when we have these two different things together. And in general, you want to avoid using analysis by personal experience in isolation. Now, if you're doing professional experience, I would like to get a noun from you again, Sarah.
Okay, it should be. Oh, the pressure. Yeah, we'll go with Maine Coon.
Okay. As a human resources manager with more than 20 years of experience, this is a bad sign because one of the most common causes cited by departing employees in my exit interviews was Steve Jobs owning Maine Coons that he let wander around the office, making people sneeze. All right. This concludes our webinar on this topic. I just want to briefly go through the things that we've talked about today. So you heard Sarah and I discuss analysis and synthesis through the lens of cats and possibly excessive cat ownership, subjective, and how to analyze that. You also saw us talk about the specific assignment and talk about the basic architecture of how to present single source analysis. And then just as a bow on that, that we also talked about the importance of proofreading and making sure that you look for consistency and that you have a polished presentation by leaving the time to run a spelling and grammar check first of your Word document. And if you're working in a presentation, to also go and do a visual check. And you will do no visual check so close as when you're actually presenting on the slides. So make sure to keep those in mind. Sarah, if I wanted to go to the Writing Center to get help on my argument for rescuing Jill from this plague of Maine Coon cats, and I wanted to make an appointment, where should I go?
You should go to the Writing Center website. You can also reach us on the My ACU group. We have a page with a bunch of links to all our resources. You can watch this lovely video that's all about how to make appointments with us and what kind of appointments we have, because we do have two types, our asynchronous email appointments, and then of course Zoom real-time appointments, depending on what works best with your schedule and what you'd like to work on. Zoom appointments are really great if you're wanting to brainstorm, but if you just want a tutor to look over what you have and send you feedback, then the email appointments are a great way to go.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to schedule an appointment, as Sarah described. And with that, say thank you for joining us and have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. And we'll see if we could get those cats relocated.
Not to